It starts in a quiet but powerful place, Cincinnati, 1857, a growing city along the Ohio River, busy streets, rising industry, and behind closed doors, conversations about power, law, and the future of a nation. Because in one of those homes, a boy was born into it, William Howard Taft. His father, Alphonso Taft, wasn't just successful, he was deeply connected Attorney General, Secretary of War, and a man who stood at the center of Americans' leadership. So for young Taft, politics wasn't distant, it was dinner table conversation. But here's what makes Taft different from almost every other president in our series. He didn't grow up chasing the presidency. He wasn't driven by ambition of power. He was drawn to something quieter, something more precise, the law. At Yale University, Taft didn't dominate the room with energy or charisma. He wasn't a Roosevelt. He wasn't a Grant. He was methodical, measured, the kind of man who thought before he spoke and meant it when he did. After graduating, he returned to Cincinnati and began building a life in law. And this is where his story really starts to take shape because Taft wasn't rising fast, he was rising carefully. He became a judge, then a federal judge, a respected legal mind, the kind of person people trusted, not because he was loud, but because he was steady. And for Taft, that would have been enough. A respected career, a quiet legacy, but history had other plans. Enter William McKinley, another Ohio president, another piece of your larger story. McKinley saw something in Taft that went beyond the courtroom. So he gave him a challenge that would change everything. The Philippines. After the Spanish American War, the United States suddenly found itself in control of distant territory and no clear roadmap for what came next. And McKinley chose Taft to help lead it. Now imagine that shift from a courtroom in Ohio to governing millions of people across the world, different language, different culture, political tensions everywhere. But Taft didn't rule with force. He built schools, improved infrastructure, worked to stabilize a system that could have easily fallen apart. He believed something simple, but powerful, that leadership wasn't about control, it was about fairness. And people noticed, especially one man, Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt was energy, action, momentum, everything Taft wasn't. And somehow that's exactly why he trusted him. When Roosevelt decided not to run again in 1908, he didn't just step away, he chose a successor, Taft. And just like that, the man who never wanted the presidency became the President of the United States. Now, real quick, if you're into stories like this, especially this series on the 8 presidents from Ohio, hit the subscribe button because this story, it's part of something bigger, and the next one might surprise you even more. But here's where things start to unravel because being president and wanting to be president are two very different things. Taft approached leadership like a judge, careful, deliberate, by the book, but the country, it was moving fast, and it wanted bold decisions. And then there was Roosevelt, still watching, still influencing, still casting a shadow over everything Taft did. At first, they were allies, but slowly that relationship cracked. Policy disagreements, different visions, different styles, until finally they turned on each other. And it all came to a head in 1912. Three major figures, Taft, Roosevelt, and Woodrow Wilson. It wasn't just an election, it was a split, a divided party, a fractured vision for the country. And the result? Taft didn't just lose, he was overwhelmed. For most presidents, that would have been the end, a rise followed by a fall. But Taft's story doesn't end there, because remember, the presidency was never his dream. Years later, another Ohio connection stepped in, Warren G. Harding. In 1921, Harding made a decision no one else in history had made before. He appointed Taft Chief Justice of the United States. And finally, Taft was exactly where he wanted to be, on the Supreme Court. He wasn't trying to lead a movement, he was shaping the system itself, improving how courts worked, bringing structure to justice across the nation. And in doing so, he became the only person in America history to lead both the executive branch and the judicial branch. From Cincinnati to the White House to the Supreme Court, William Howard Taft didn't follow ambition, he followed purpose. And this is just one story out of 8 presidents from Ohio. 8 completely different paths to power. 8 very different legacies. And when we finish all 8, we are going to answer the bigger question. Why did Ohio produce so many presidents in the first place? So make sure you're subscribed, because that story might be the most interesting of them all. Thank you for watching.